There's nothing wrong with feeling bad. That is hard to deal with. We can deal with this. I'm sorry, Cove. You know I'm here for you. Yeah, that's a lot. You didn't know what to say. There's nothing wrong with feeling bad. This is hard to deal with. The tense lines of Cove's shoulders eased. Thanks, that makes me feel a little better, like I'm not freaking out for no reason. A momentary silence fell over the two of you. You marveled at how the day started. You had woken up eager for summer vacation, but now things seemed so crazy. The mini debacle with Mr. Holden's gift, the newest addition to the neighborhood being so rude. And as if all that wasn't enough, now Cove's mom would be living with Cove and his dad again? Your whole life was kind of like that, it seemed. Complicated and hard and different. Why couldn't things just get better with time? Vaughn, the sound of your name, said quietly, pulled you from your thoughts. Cove gazed at you, concerned.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay. You meant it. Yeah, I'm okay. You didn't mean it. No, I'm not. I don't know. Who, me? I'm more worried about you. Wow, things are kind of bad for everyone, huh? Who, me? I'm more worried about you. You don't have to forget about yourself for me. You don't have to forget about yourself for me. I want to listen to you too. Cove grinned reassuringly. It was small and delicate, but you knew it was genuine. Moonlight from outside cast shadows across his face and lit up his eyes. They seemed to sparkle with his smile. Just one look brightened your mood somewhat. You know, I think I don't want to talk anymore about this. Do you want to just have a hug? He looked away, his lips thinning into a line, and rubbed at his arms. But I kind of don't want to go back home either. Could I stay a little longer, just doing something else? He appeared equal parts hopeful and vulnerable. How could you possibly turn him away? You can stay tonight, but we should make a habit of this. I've got a flashlight and some cards. Are you in? Of course, you can always stay here, Cove. Of course, you can always stay here, Cove. You held his gaze confidently, hoping your words got across to him. Cove perked up at your response, a smile appearing on his face. He immediately took a seat on your bed, not afraid to get comfortable in your room. Or in my bed, apparently. You felt a little better at the sight, somehow. You still had a lot of worries, but you were glad he was there. Remember, everybody, we're just 13. We're just 13. Nothing's gonna happen. Alright? But you're glad he was here. And not just tonight. You were glad he came into your life in the first place. That was a change you'd never want to undo. It felt totally natural to let him into your little world. That initial friendship had deepened so much over these past years, and you were certain there was room to get even closer. You joined Cove on your bed, taking a seat across from him. He smiled at you again, but you could tell this time it was half-hearted. He was still easy to read. Although he didn't want to talk about his mom and dad, he must be thinking about what happened and what's about to happen. You smiled gently at him. You put a hand on his shoulder. You patted his back. You hugged him. You took his hand in yours. You nudged him with your foot. I'm gonna hug him. You moved closer and wrapped your arms around him. It wasn't much, but you hoped the contact helped even a little. Cove froze up, startled. After a moment, his arms came up and he returned your hug. The two of you remained like that for some time. He might have mumbled something to you, but it was too quiet to tell what it was. When you pulled back, his expression had softened into something more natural. Conversation was stilted and broken often by silence at first, then both of you were able to get into your usual candor. As your secret hangout session stretched on, you thought that you truly wanted to keep having moments like this with him. You hoped the day would never come when life decided that the two of you would have to part ways, and you knew Cove felt the same. You opened your tired eyes, groaning as they adjusted to the bright light that was streaming through your window and warming your tanned skin. With a loud yawn, you rolled away from the sunlight and blinked a couple of times, clearing the sleep from your eyes before realizing with a start that it was actually morning. You couldn't remember even falling asleep. Cove had crept through your window during the night, and the two of you spent time together, trying not to wake your parents. He must have fallen asleep while you were hanging out, but couldn't put a finger on exactly when. You wondered how late Cove had stayed before heading home. You rubbed your face and yawned again, contemplating whether you should get out of bed and get ready for the day, or stay snuggled up for a little while longer. Until your gaze landed on an instantly recognizable mop of pale green hair, and you bolted upright and gasped in surprise. He never left. He was still there, in the morning. Cove, you laughed out loud. You jumped out of bed. You froze. I'm just gonna laugh. He had fallen asleep while sitting on the ground and precariously leaning his head on the side of your mattress. With your laugh, Cove's eyes snapped open and his head slipped from its source of support. He didn't stop going down until he smacked right into the floor with a crack. I have a feeling that I like to think that our relationship has humor in it, which is why I wanted to choose the laugh part. You know? You clamped a hand over your mouth and looked down at him with wide eyes, curled up where he had landed rather ungracefully. Ow. You laughed even more. Are you okay? You helped him up. Shh, my moms are gonna hear us. I'm gonna help him up. Here. Cove complied by putting his hand in yours, and you helped him back into a sitting position. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm alright. If either of your moms found out Cove had slept there last night, the two of you would be in big trouble. Cove blinked at you a couple times, his eyes growing in panic as some thought that only he could hear settled in his mind.
Oh my god!
I love how his voice cracks there. I fell asleep! You weren't exactly sure what to do as you watched Cove pace her room, looking around frantically. Cove stopped mid-step, and you wanted to ask what he had been searching for, but you guessed he wouldn't know the answer. He wouldn't know the answer to that himself. Despite that, he hadn't calmed down completely. The atmosphere was still frazzled. It's going to be alright. We're going to be in so much trouble. Just calm down. Settle down before moms hear you. You didn't see anything. Settle down before mom hears you. It's gonna be alright. You just need to leave before anyone notices you're here. If they knew, we would have heard about it already. Cove nodded, his shoulders tensed as he fixed you with a firm stare with his turquoise eyes. Letting out a heavy sigh, he ran a hand through his hair in exasperation. He couldn't look at you again as he spoke. I'll see you later. You were confused by how all of this played out, but hoped that was true. I love how if Cove never intended on spending the night, why is he suddenly wearing pajamas right now? Like, if he accidentally fell asleep, he would have accidentally fallen asleep in his normal clothes, not his pajamas. So that's a little bit of a continuity issue that I kind of have. Right. Bye, Cove. At that, you were suddenly wrapped up in a tense embrace. As panicked as he was, this seemed to be something he couldn't forget before leaving. Thanks again. You're a good friend, Rakamvan. A really good friend. So he's friend-zoning us right now. He firmly whispered the words into the top of your shoulders. It made you feel tingly. But you were let go before you had a chance to respond, or even fully react. In a matter of seconds, he climbed over your bed and opened the window. A cool breeze rolled off the ocean, flooding through Cove's hair and filling your room with its salty scent. Cove anxiously stepped out onto the ledge. You wished him luck. You rallied him to keep going. You suggested he sneak out the door instead. You urged him to hurry. I mean, he's already on his way out, so I'll wish him luck. Good luck. Be super careful. You weren't sure if he heard you or not, but he kept going along, one foot in front of the other with increasing speed until his form disappeared out of sight. You stuck your head out the window as far as it could to try keeping watch. He walked down the full length of the ledge before jumping down to the top of the garage, then lowering himself onto the fence. From there, he finally dropped down to the ground. You threw out a thumbs up at his successful climb. Good job, Cove. He ran off towards his house without stopping, disappearing behind the side of another building. You had to admit that you were pretty impressed at how doable he made that look. Cove always seemed to have a way of seeming so smooth without even meaning to. That's kind of surprising for me, actually. With a little sigh, you reclosed your window, deciding there was nothing more you could do. You hopped off your bed and got ready to head downstairs for the day. You put on your slippers, you checked yourself in the mirror, you made your bed, you just left. I'm gonna make my bed. It was a habit of yours. You straightened up your sheets, smoothed over your comforter, and fluffed your pillows before stepping back and admiring your work. You took the stairs, slowly attempting to mask your face into a look of innocence. You were sure that someone would have come into your room if they had heard anything strange, but you couldn't be too careful. You had to play it cool. When you stepped into the living room, Elizabeth was there, tapping her finger on the counter. Good morning, Elizabeth. She looked you over immediately, her eyes squinting at the greeting.
Why?
Why are you being so weird? You hadn't even done anything. Your big sister's never missed a beat, unfortunately. You turned and offered a tight smile, and her lips pursed together even tighter. Vaughn? You shrugged it off. You clammed up. Wouldn't you like to know? Sorry. You excitedly blurted it out. You folded. I mean, I think I would have played it cool. You shrugged it off. I'm not. You spoke so nonchalantly, almost thought she believed you. But you knew better. Further suspicious squinting occurred as she waited for something. But ultimately she rolled her eyes, and you weren't sure if you were in trouble or not. She didn't seem to care enough to dig any further. Whatever. And then she walked straight out the front door, letting it slam shut behind her, and you let out a brief sigh. Elizabeth went out most days to hang out with her friends from school around town. Today you were extra glad for it, though you were also grateful she hadn't left the house any sooner and risked running into Cove. It looked like you were getting away with that. Breakfast was eaten in peace and alone. Your moms were both out by the time you had gotten up. They had left you a serving of food from the breakfast they made. Hash browns, an omelet, fruit salad, and there were a few sausage links. Yum! You took a little bit of everything. You passed on some parts because they weren't things you liked. You passed on some parts because you were trying to avoid meat. You passed on some parts because you were trying to avoid animal products. No. Hook me up with everything. A little bit of everything. That's definitely me. It was tasty. You appreciated there was a variety in the meals your moms made. Thanks, moms. The day lazily drifted by. You pulled open the fridge again, lingering in the frosty air for a moment or two before grabbing a bottle of ice-cold water and taking a long drink. It was a perfect, balmy summer afternoon, and you had decided to head outdoors and find something to do. You hadn't decided what that something was just yet, but you were sure something would pop up to occupy your time. As you were heading out the front door, you paused for a moment. You hadn't seen Cove since he had left the morning, and you couldn't help but think about what had happened to him. Would it be bad to go over to his house right now, or to call him to check in? You stepped out of your house, still stuck in an internal debate with yourself, when a voice caught your attention.
Hi.
Hi, Vaughn. Confused, you looked over to where an unrecognizable woman was waving at you, a friendly smile plastered on her face. You racked your memory for where you might have seen her before, but nothing came to mind. Not your school or from the country club your moms took you to. You had absolutely no idea who the woman was. The woman crossed the road towards you, and you were a little unsure whether you should stay put or go back into the house and lock the door. Oh, interesting. Oops, I'm sorry. Was I presumptuous? I heard about you, but you have no idea who I am, do you? You shook her head, and she removed her sunglasses to reveal sparkly ocean blue eyes. All of a sudden, she seemed a little more familiar. Is that Cove's mom? My son lives here, and my ex, too. Oh, wow, I did not expect this. She's pretty, though, and I like her tattoo and her outfit. With a bent smile, she lifted a hand to point at the condo across the street from your house. She was Cove's mom. Wow, I can definitely see the resemblance. You didn't know why you hadn't realized sooner now that you'd gotten a good look at her. She seemed nice. She seemed sort of strange. She looked really young. It made sense that she was Cove's mom. She felt so different to Cove. She was super pretty. She felt so different to Cove. In the little time you've been around her, she'd given off a totally different impression than Cove did. No matter your thoughts on her, you still felt taken aback that she had appeared here so suddenly. Cove mentioned she was coming, but you hadn't gotten the impression it would be the very next day. She extended a hand again, this time for you to take, and you studied the manicured fingers in front of your face and the assortment of bracelets that dangled from her wrist. I'm Kyra Priest. You can call me Kyra. You shook her hand. I'm gonna shake her hand. I'm not gonna be rude about it. You reached out and took her hand, and she shook yours firmly, grinning wide. I'm Vaughn, but you already know that. That I do. Cove's mentioned you to me before. It's nice to officially meet you, Vaughn. I'm happy that he's mentioned me several times. Wish he mentioned you a few more times, at least described you more a few times. Cove talked to you about his mom. He hadn't mentioned how he had said things about you to her. What has Cove said about me? What are you doing here? Nice to meet you too. You kept. Oh, I'm gonna be pretty direct. I said, oh, well, what has Cove said about me? Oh, I can't tell you that. I've already said too much. She laughed good-naturedly. You couldn't be happy about that answer, though. I would be happy, actually, because I could be optimistic about that. The sound of a door opening and closing caught both your attentions, and when you turned towards the sound, it was to find Cove exiting his house, his eyes skimming the ground. Considering just how tall he had grown, you kind of figured his mom also would have been tall, but she was much more on the short side for an adult anyway. Cove's height must have come from his father.
My baby.
There you are. I thought you weren't going to keep me standing here all day. You tried to catch Cove's eye as he walked towards you, but his gaze was firmly fixed on the sidewalk. When he finally crossed the road and looked up, he gave you a pitiful look. After the way he had acted last night, you knew he must be feeling pretty mixed up about this. You tried to wordlessly express that you understood. Cove and I are heading into town to grab something to eat while the snore is at work. While the snore is at work? Are you talking about your ex-husband? Okay. I guess you could be calling him worse things. Kyra beamed at Cove and ruffled his hair, which only seemed to upset him more. You assumed the snore she was talking about was Mr. Holden. Hey, you should come with us, Vaughn. I'd love to get to know you better. Yeah, you should come, Cove is like, please. There was a pleading in his tone that you couldn't miss. Of course, we'll run it by your parents first. Responsibility on all that. That's what I like to hear. It'll give me an excuse to meet them, which I need to do at some point. It's important to be neighborly if I'm going to be roosting on this street for the time being. Any whoosies, let's go. I like her. I like Cove's mom so far. Kyra walked ahead towards her house, and you hung back with Cove, who crinkled his nose as he watched her.
Sorry.
I'm sorry about her, but I really do want you to come. I don't want it to be just the two of us. Not right now. Okay. Just the two of us. Just the two of us. You and I. You leaned in closer and whispered, while checking around for anyone who might hear. What happened? Did your dad know you were gone? Cove shook his head and sighed heavily. Dad was so focused on Mom showing up, he didn't even notice. I thought when I heard them on the phone last night that it was something they were planning for the future. This morning, Dad said it was supposed to be a surprise, and I guess I was surprised. She's gonna be here all summer. Oh, I actually think that's pretty cool. Not sure if how Cove feels about it, but I think it's cool to have his mom around. You were surprised to hear that too. Cove sighed again, even heavier. I'll go with you if you really want me to. He smiled, his shoulders relaxing a little in relief. Thanks, that'd be cool. The two of you headed over to where Cove's mom had just knocked on your front door and stood behind her. Mom answered the door after a minute, her eyebrows lifting in surprise at the group she found in front of her. You realized that, like you, she would have no idea that it was Cove's mom who was hanging with you. However, after blinking at the woman a couple times and looking between her and Cove, the realization seemed to strike on her. Hello there, I'm Pamela. I see you've met my kid, Vaughn, and I'm guessing you've already known Cove for a while. Kyra laughed, and you and Cove exchanged looks at your parents' weird sense of humor. I think that's a pretty cool sense of humor. I appreciate my parents and, like, my older... I appreciate older people's sense of humor. I mean, some people may groan about the dad jokes, but I'm like... I'd rather that, you know, my parents attempt to be funny, even if it's groan-worthy or cringe-worthy. The fact that they attempt to have a sense of humor, to me, is awesome, and I don't think that should be discouraged. But that's just me personally. I'm Kyra Priest, Cove's mom. It's nice to meet you. A head of purple-brown hair caught your eye as Ma popped up behind them, squeezing herself in beside her. We have company. I was wondering what all the commotion was. She grinned excitedly at Kyra. The two of them introduced themselves and shook hands.
Hello.
Hi, Vaughn. Cove. Hi, Vaughn. Cove. Cove smiled at Ma shyly as she gestured a hand towards the living room. There's no use hanging around the doorway. Why don't you come in? I'd love to, but I promised to take my son out to eat, and I wouldn't want to hold you up with a surprise visit. Oh, I understand. You're welcome to stop by anytime.
Of course.
I'll take you up on the offer when I can. Count on it. Would you mind too much if Vaughn went with Cove and I? My treat, we won't be driving, just a quick walk down the road. Sure, that sounds nice.
Have fun.
I hope you all have fun. You gave your moms a look and they smiled at you fondly. You were happy they were letting you go. You were annoyed they agreed just like that. No! I was happy they were letting me go. You could tell that Cove really needed the support, and you're ready to be there for them. Marvelous. Expect us back in an hour or two. I'd like to believe that as a middle schooler, teenager, I actually was pretty easy on my parents. Like, I wasn't particularly, like, rebellious or moody. I mean, I'm sure I had my moments, but in general, like, My parents probably didn't annoy me like the average teenager would have felt annoyed by their parents. Like, I don't know. I just never went into that typical teenage phase where I was just like so cut off from my parents or annoyed at every little thing that they did. That was just never my personality. So, we look forward to seeing you again. Take care. Your parents waved goodbye to the three of us as you backed up onto the street. There was the sound of the front door closing behind you. I'm pretty positive I saw some restaurants when I was in the taxi, not too far from here. Yeah, there's a lot of them around. The answer was straightforward and the tone was curt. Cove was usually more lighthearted than that. Kyra put her hands on her hips and smiled at her son. Well, you sound like the area expert. Do you have any recommendations for a place nearby? Not really. Kyra pouted at him a little and turned to you instead. How about you, Vaughn? Want to point me in the right direction? You shrugged. Not really. Sure, I have a couple of favorites. Sure, I have a couple of favorites. Yeah. You'd been to a lot of places in town, and there were a couple that stood out from all the rest. There's a Chinese restaurant that me and my family go to all the time. It's my mom's favorite. There's also a tropical-themed place that tries to be sort of fancy. Ooh, tropical place. Both sound like a treat. I'll leave it to you to pick for us, since Cove is going through a phase over there. Family drama. He huffed at her and turned his face away. The Chinese restaurant, the tropical-themed place. You insisted Cove contribute to the decision. You insisted Kai decide. Yeah, I feel like... So if normally I would pick the tropical-themed place because I feel like you can go to a Chinese restaurant virtually anywhere. And tropical-themed places are a little bit less common, and I'm the kind of person who loves, spice of the variety of life is my thing. But I feel like I should encourage Cove to contribute to the decision and, try to break him out of this phase he's going through right now. I insist Cove contribute to the decision. It's okay, Cove. Tell us which you want more. He mumbled sulkily, willing to reject his mom, but not you. Yeah. Go ahead. Just try and reject me. Because I understand that I have influence over Cove, and hopefully I don't abuse those influences with Cove. I feel like this is one of those cases where influencing him in this way is positive. I use my superpowers for good. I like the tropical place more. Yes, that's my man. That's what I wanted to do too. That's where I wanted to go too. See? This is why Cove is the keeper. I like the tropical place more. That's what I would have gone for too. Perfect. Let's do it. With 2 votes in favor of one restaurant, it seemed like it was settled. I mean, that would have been my vote too. We can go there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vaughn. Thank you, Cove. Will you show us the way? You nodded, taking the lead of your little group as Cove and his mom followed behind you. Together, the 3 of you left the neighborhood behind. The walk was about 15 minutes, and along the way, Kyra asked a lot of questions about the area. Cove was quiet most of the time, so you ended up answering her instead. This is kind of a bummer. I'm kind of bummed that, Cove is sort of being... I'm kind of bummed out that Cove is kind of being a sourpuss throughout this. I get it. Okay, so he probably has issues with his mom. I get it. But I don't know, I just feel like, again, and this is me, but even when I have issues with my parents, if I'm out in public with a guest, if I'm going out in public with friends and with guests, and this is probably an Asian thing. This is probably an Asian thing with me. I am more than willing to put aside, my, drama with my parents so that my friends can have a good time, if that makes sense. I am not going to, allow my personal issues to affect the enjoyment of people that we're out in public with, if that makes sense. Because I feel like as an Asian, that feels very inconsiderate. As an Asian thinking, it's very inconsiderate, and or maybe it's Filipino thinking too. That might be a Filipino thing. And I would not want to, make their time with us less enjoyable because of my own personal issues with my family. And my parents do the same thing too. Like, they also try not to bring the mood down if they're having issues with me, if that makes sense. So this is why I'm a little bummed, and about the whole Cove kind of being whatever, because it affects his guests' enjoyment. Not that this was his idea to go out. Well, no, he invited me. He invited me to go with them, and it feels borderline selfish, because in the sense that it feels like the reason why he wanted me to come with was so that it would be more enjoyable for him, so that this outing would be more enjoyable for him, but not really taking consideration how much he would be affecting my enjoyment of the outing when he's being a downer, a Debbie Downer, if that makes sense. Like, because okay, cool, Vaughn's coming, so hopefully it's not going to be as lame. And so, he's borderline using me to make himself feel better about this outing, but at the same time, he's sort of like making things worse for me because he's being such a Debbie Downer. I know. I mean, I probably am being too hard on Cove, and I get it. These are middle school. These people are in middle school, so I can't expect too much. So, but I'm just speaking out of my experience from when I was in middle school, because I'm very different from Cove. Well, middle school me is very different from middle school Cove. So, anyway, keep going. Kyra explained that she lived in a large city and she loved how peaceful and relaxing everything seemed in Sunset Bird. The restaurant was busy as usual, but luckily you were shown right to a small table. Kyra lowered herself into the chair while Cove picked the one diagonal to her, not facing her or to her side. It was awkward. Let's see. To start, what would you all like to drink? I'll get an orange soda. Noted. Vaughn? Just water. No! Soda, milk, juice, coffee. I mean, we're in a tropical place. If it's a tropical restaurant, they must have really awesome tropical fruit juice, is what I'm thinking. So, see, this is me thinking as a foodie. Like, I order things based on the type of place that I'm at. So if it's a tropical place, I'm getting the tropical juice. Which flavor? Oh, come on. You don't have any pineapple juice? You don't have any like guava juice or anything tropical? Seriously? Come on, game. There weren't enough foodies who were involved in the writing of this game, I can see. Really? Really? Okay, well, I love apple juice, but I mean, that lemonade better be freshly squeezed and not from a can. If it's freshly squeezed lemonade, I'd be all over it. Otherwise, my go-to is apple.